away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
Thank you, Judy. Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Needham. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation of humanists, theists, atheists, agnostics, seekers, and interfaith families. My name is David Berman, pronouns are he, him. With my partner, Nancy Temple, I've been a member of First Parish for about 10 years. Here at First Parish, we covenant to live out our shared values of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, respecting the earth, and co-creating beloved community. Whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever your background or identity, whatever your age or stage, and whether you're participating from here or online, you're welcome here. Leading today's service will be Ellie Del Valle. Ellie grew up in Needham, participating in First Parish's RE program and youth group. She then left for Acadia University in Nova Scotia, where she earned her Bachelor of Community Development. Ellie has been First Parish's sponsored UU ministerial candidate. This year, she got her Master's of Divinity, cum laude, from BU to add to her Master's in Social Work. In the summer, she'll be applying for the Licensed Independent Clinical Social Worker credential with the state and will be doing her clinical pastoral education with Beth Israel Hospital starting in the fall. A key theme for Ellie has been the importance of being curious. That leading with curiosity is a better way to understand ourselves, others, and the world around us. Ellie is proudly queer and passionate about social justice. She enjoys video games, and her favorite food is the Canadian special poutine. You can learn more about what's happening here at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, and signing up for our weekly email newsletter, or by following us on social media. Our order of service is online also at the QR code in your pews and at our website. Please speak with our ushers, greeters, and Zoom hosts if you have questions or accessibility needs. This morning's service and many past and future services are made available on YouTube at our First Parish in Needham channel. Welcome again to everyone here in the building and online. We're so glad you're here. Chalice lighting.
We light this chalice knowing that candles and flame are often a part of memorial. We know that this flame dances in our heart and eyes, just as memories of loved ones and heroic ones dance in our heart and soul. May these flames keep reminding us of the strength and courage of our ancestors and our contemporaries. Amen. Now, please join me in singing hymn 159. This is my song. You're invited to stand as you are willing and able.
This is my song. song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my only shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My countrysides are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for them and for one.
In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the covenant is a set of promises the membership of a congregation strives to honor with one another and out in the world. Please say along with me the words of our parish covenant as found in your orders of service. We gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world. Time for today, time for all ages. The subject will be A Day for Remembering, and it will be led by Emily Lapierre.
Good morning. Memorial Day was originally called Decoration Day. It was established to honor those who gave their lives while fighting in the Civil War. The Civil War began in 1861, and it was when the states in the northern part of the United States, called the Union, and the states in the southern part of the United States, called the Confederacy, were fighting one another. The North wanted to keep the United States together, both North and South, to ensure that the people were equal by ridding of slavery. The South did not agree with this and wanted to fight to create their own country separate from the North and to keep slavery intact. This war was fought for 4 years until 1865, and the South gave in to the North. The United States remained united and slavery was abolished. This story is an excerpt of the story of what many consider to be the first Memorial Day service. It takes place in Charleston, South Carolina, at the end of the Civil War from the perspective of a young boy named Eli. A Day for Remembering by Leah Henderson. 9 days in a row, Papa got up early and was gone again. I still can't go with him, though. He said, Eli, school's where you need to be, reading and counting. But I am counting right here, day 9. Not following after Papa is harder than holding a hot potato in my hands. He said important work has to be done. I imagine him out there standing up to folks who spit in our faces, call us names, try to run us out of our home, mad that we aren't enslaved. Or I think of him putting out fires and keeping order with the 21st Colored Infantry. Union soldiers who were brown like us, who marched up Meeting Street holding their heads high in victory, especially the ones who had been a slave here in Charleston. They were some of the first to come when the mayor surrendered to the city, to the Union. No use begging to follow Papa, though. Mama will only fuss. Eli, you now have the hard-earned right to learn, and it's what's gonna get you beyond. You're going to school, and no more words for getting split about it. Before the war, worry never left my insides alone, afraid that Mama or Papa would get sold away. But today, those days in the fields are over. Papa comes home with us, night covers the sky, almost looking a little worse than after toiling in the master's fields. We were diggin' and buildin' and paintin', he says after supper. Diggin', buildin', and paintin'? But Papa isn't giving no more answers. Wake up, Eli. Today, you're coming with me. Day 10, and I sprung up out of bed like beans in a skillet and jumped into my britches. Something important must be happening if Papa is letting me miss even 1 second of my school, my hard-earned right, and Mama isn't putting up no fuss. You need to see the work we's doing before it's all done, he says. We strut through the entrance at the Planters Racecourse, where white folks used to watch mighty horses run before the war, but it isn't a racecourse no more. Without a word, Papa and the other men got to digging, hammering, and cutting wood. Papa points to the fence, where some of my schoolmates have joined their papas too. Help with the whitewashing, Eli. I drag my feet, though, wanting to stay by Papa's side, but he rushes around doing more work in a minute than he had done in 3 hours on the master's land. An old usher from our church pushes a paintbrush in my hand, and I get to working too. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen, nobody knows my sorrow, sings as we work. When the sun starts slipping behind the trees, they raise an arch. Tired, pinches my shoulders, my palms blaze, crisscross with tiny little scrapes from a day's hard toil. But I don't pay the sting or ache no mind. We've done good work from the soldiers who've lost their lives for our freedom. The next morning before the rooster's first gawks, I leap up, but I'm not going to school again today. None of us colored children are. The day is that important. My best mended pants and cleanest shirt wait on my blanket. Mama gathers up her basket filled with Mayflower bundles. Papa straightens his hat, and we leave our yard just as our neighbor leaves theirs. Black faces, more than I've ever seen together, fill the streets with bouquets, crosses, and wreaths. I'm not sure a flower is left unpicked in Charleston today. My schoolmates carry roses and hawthorns, but since I'm fastest at learning my numbers and letters, I get to carry the flag. Right out in front, I stomp, knees high, like the important colored soldiers did right up Meeting Street. Mama strides in her best calico dress behind the women, grinning, proud. I can't see Papa, but I know he is somewhere in the quilt of black, brown, and white faces. In line stretching longer than a mile, we cross onto the old race course, singing with our fullest hearts. We are singing for all of our buried Union soldiers. After the last word is sung, quiet comes. Our feet shushing across the sandy soil, we circle the fresh dirt mounds with sweet-smelling petals of rose, lilac, and jasmine swirling to the ground. Thousands of hands sprinkle thousands of spring blossoms. The flag flaps in the breeze when I hand it off, as if waving goodbye to the Union soldiers who are finally at peace. Pastors preach of sacrifice, abolitionists proclaim freedom, and officers bay at us to remember. Even though we are sad, we are celebrating too. My heart rests easy now. Me, Mama, and Papa can never be sold no more, and I'm getting my schooling its own freedom, like Mama said. So my insides feel all good. While breaking bread, we listen to more speeches about the martyrs, those who have sacrificed, of the racecourse and freedom. There's lots of head nodding and mm-hms as families gather around the grandstand, remembering, shedding tears, and giving thanks above. That flag never stops waving, but all my old slave time worries fly away. And as the moon joins in, we leave the race course with empty hands and near bursting hearts, hoping those Union soldiers, hugged by Charleston's sweetest blossoms, will know that we never forget what they've given themselves for the priceless gift of our liberty. This story is said to be based on one of the first community-led observances of Decoration Day, remembering the importance of the very beginning days and roots of the holiday that we commemorate today. It is important to consider the significance of the gesture of these once enslaved peoples towards the soldiers who were lost fighting in part of their freedom. Over the years, the holiday has changed to remember all American military peoples who have died in any and all wars. Every year on Memorial Day, we remember men and women in the armed forces through the years who have died in service and sacrifice to our country. Thank you.
Are you going to lead the kids to? Yes. I'll give you a candle.
Okay.
May the long time sun shine upon you. All love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on.
Now is the time when we share the milestones and traditions of our lives. Come up, light a candle, state your name and pronouns, and share what's on your heart. We try and restrict ourselves to matters concerning ourselves or those close to us. As all our services live stream to YouTube, we cannot guarantee that our words will stay within the First Parish community. To share more privately, you are always welcome to reach out to Reverend Katie, Dara Bryans, or the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, which this week is Florence Graves. So please come up. Sure.
Hi, I'm Jen Duhamel, and I'm lighting a candle of gratefulness for my mom, who for the last 20 years has worked as a case manager at a transitional living program for homeless veterans. And they range in age from 20 to in their 80s, all wars, all walks of life. But what I want to lift up is that my mom takes extra care to make sure that when it comes to the end of their life, they die with dignity, whether it happens at the house or they do need to be transferred to the hospital. And and the guys are very close, whether they're 21 or 85. And she makes sure there's a community there. So I'm very proud of my mom and the work that she does.
Good morning. I'm Phil Lyons. I'm co-chair of the worship committee. But you don't see me very often because I live in Hudson since 2 years ago. But I'm always here in principle and in spirit. And I want to thank you for continuing through thick and thin and bring you greetings from all of our Zoom participants, because I'm often the one who's hosting our Zoom social hour and sharing our services through Zoom, picked up from the online YouTube streaming. Peter Panoff and I, and sometimes a few others, have been carrying that forward. So, still feeling very pleased to be a vibrant member of this congregation. Thank you.
I want to echo how much work Phil and Peter and the others on the worship committee do to keep our services, make our services happen. I'll light one final silent candle for those joys that have not yet come to fruition and for those sorrows of which we are not yet ready to speak.
Please join me in this spirit of prayer. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, please hear our prayers. We are holding so much in our hearts, including gratefulness for social service workers, those who hold our community members in their final moments, gratefulness for our communities, our community leaders, and for our remote communities who, through the blessing of technology, can be a part of our lives more fully. We also hold the many griefs and sorrows that exist silently within our hearts and have not yet been spoken or may not ever be spoken. Grant us the strength to move with courage through our hurting world. Help others to do so and be a beacon of hope. Dear God, we ask for help from the deep well of spirit and nature to maintain our own hope, our own sense of direction, to not be discouraged, and to have the fire of conviction within our bellies. Amen. Please join me in the meditative responsive hymn 1009, 1009 in your blue hymnal. One of my favorites, a meditation on breathing.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in,
For 300 years, First Parish has been supported by the time and treasure of its members and friends. This is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer to give what we can to build and sustain the world we envision. This month, our plate collection will be shared equally between First Parish and the Needham Diversity Initiative, a local nonprofit committed to celebrating, exploring, and strengthening Needham's diversity. There are several ways to give that are outlined in the order of service and on the screen, and the old-fashioned plate. May the ushers come forward.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young ones pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the children gone? Long time passing. Where have all the children gone? Long time ago. Where have all the children gone? They're all in uniform. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young ones pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Thank you. Today's reading is an excerpt from a book called Post-Traumatic Theology, edited by Stephanie N. Errol and my professor at BU School of Theology, Shelley Rambo, who hooded me last weekend during my graduation. The chapter of this book is called War Bodies, Remembering Bodies in a Time of War. written by Willie James Jennings. In North Carolina, no one remembers easily. We are a military state. Military bases and military culture imprint our state. And now that imprint is scarred. Indeed, it has been scarred for quite some time. Because what fills the social landscape of North Carolina are wounded veterans, those whose bodies are marked with the memories of war. They are signatures of an unclean escape from death. We who inhabit this state with them, both the geographic and the psychic state, are implicated in their very difficult work of remembering. Remembering not only who they were before war, but of negotiating the memories of war that shape their present. Yet what has become clear to me is that the challenge of that memory work is made even more tortuous by its entanglements in America's confused moral landscape. The theological question here is not how do we remember, or even how do we remember well. The crucial question is, under what conditions do we remember? Veterans exist on the American social landscape as human objects to gaze upon and to evoke a range of emotions from pity to admiration, from anger to confusion. We have been taught to look in ways that create distance between us and them, a distance that increases through the growing chasm between the rich and the poor. We function with both the denial of our deep connection to soldiers and the real implication of weaponizing human beings and telling them to kill or be killed for us. What our veterans expose is the deep contradictions of America's moral landscape, contradictions that are glossed over by a hyper-patriotism that exploits memory. We must ask with our veterans, who wishes to remember with them? And who wishes to remember for them? Those wishing to remember them for the purposes of statecraft and the market must be resisted. We should resist the kind of remembering that silences their voices and or presses them to speak only in commemorative scripts or patriotic ritual. Thus ends the reading, which I will continue at the end of my sermon. It had been less than a year since we transferred within the outreach team of Pine Street Inn, Boston's largest homeless services provider. We transferred to roles that focus specifically on veterans. We came to those roles because the Veterans Outreach team only had 1 out of 3 roles filled. Our coworker in one of those roles was a veteran, a staff sergeant in the United States Air Force. He has a beloved friend named Michael Brian Lau, and he passed away suddenly and tragically. Due to incomplete information and a communication mishap, we initially believed he had died by suicide. While we later learned that that was not the case, that was our truth. our reality for those couple of days. He was a male veteran in his early 40s. It all made sense. Of course, it would be suicide, we thought. And even if it wasn't suicide, his body likely was marked with wounds of war that contributed to his passing. Flash forward a couple of months. My colleague Emma and I were at a training at William James College in Newton on reducing the lethality of veteran suicide. This involved learning about veteran culture, gun culture, challenges unique to veterans, gun mechanics and safety, and harm reduction strategies that will reduce the chance someone will die by suicide. In this training, I learned part of the answer to a question I had had for a while. Why do I seem to have so many clients who had a short military career or who did not see combat, and yet it still seems traumatic, and their experiences still impacts them to this day? Part of the answer is that your view of yourself as a service member, your community, and the world is made to change in a bid to make you a more effective military unit. For just one single example of this, you must always have your M16 rifle on you, and that is drilled into your head during basic training. Leaving it somewhere, even just to go to the bathroom, is a large offense. Your rifle is not your rifle, a possession. It is an extension of your body that you need, because at any moment when you're deployed, disaster may strike and you may need that weapon. Before having this light bulb moment, I, at times and in certain situations, thought that veterans with shorter careers or even reserve careers or who didn't see combat were somehow less than. They sacrificed less. There wasn't the flashy, easily understood trauma and sacrifice of combat, of deployment, something that is glorified and memorialized in our culture. Now, there is a concept known to mental health professionals that I learned in social work school called disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. This is where certain types of grief are less understood and culturally supported or acknowledged, such as the death of a pet, the death of an extramarital affair partner, or the death of someone in a stigmatized way, such as a drug overdose. Today, I propose the term disenfranchised sacrifice. Disenfranchised sacrifice. First, let's take a look at some iconic photographs. As I show these photographs, I want you to notice, what is your gut reaction to seeing these? Pity? Anger? Empathy? Neutrality? Then let the photograph sink in. Again, what is your gut reaction? Firstly, we have a photograph from the civil rights movement of a 15-year-old black boy named Walter Gadsden being attacked by two white police officers and their dog in Birmingham, Alabama. This is in a 1963 protest that Martin Luther King Jr. was involved in 2 years before Bloody Sunday. This is a photograph showing a 14-year-old Mary Ann Vecchio kneeling over the dead body of a friend during the Kent State Massacre, where the Ohio National Guard shot into a crowd of students protesting the Vietnam War. What is your gut reaction? This is a photograph from the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011, a couple years after the Great Recession. This features a man getting a shave amidst the encampment in New York. This is a photograph from a 2016 Black Lives Matter protest in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, showing a woman in a dress standing in front of heavily armed riot police who appear to either be retreating or moving towards her. And how about this photo? What is your gut reaction? This is a photo from the January 6th, 2021 riot, showing supporters of former President Donald Trump scaling the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. In this photo, what is your gut reaction? This is a photograph from last month, on April 18th, showing an encampment on Columbia University grounds, showing police, anti-war protesters who are protesting the Israeli government's war on Gaza and their university's financial relationship to such. How was it to see these photos? Some of them you may have recognized. Some of them you may not have. Each of these photos depict people sacrificing, putting their bodies and futures on the line for a cause they deeply believe in. Some sacrifices seem to matter more in our society. Some of these photos changed history. Others won't or have not. Other photos are in the process of doing so as we sit in church today or at home. Some of these people depicted in these photos were seen as villains, some as heroes, and some are or will only be seen as either heroes or villains decades later. Every one of those photos has both a beautiful and a horrific element to it. For instance, the recent encampment, divestment, anti-war protests at universities nationwide has been so striking to me. These students are risking their futures and lives. There are instances degrees have literally not been conferred to protesters, such as at Harvard University, where the Harvard Corporation overrode the faculty's decision to confer those degrees to 13 protesters. In many ways, their lives are being risked as well, risking violence. All of this risk for people across the world that they will never know. That they will never know. All to send a message that the future of America, of educated youth, see a problem. While risking arrest is certainly scary, especially when it was violent, like with the 108 protesters arrested at Emerson University in Boston, 2 blocks from my workplace on April 25th. Risking your degree that you worked 4 or so years for somehow feels more proximal and more striking for me. I have known the experience of taking a public action out of moral conviction, one that could be career-ending. It is simultaneously terrifying, beautiful, and electric. These are major sacrifices. Some of those photos are examples of disenfranchised sacrifice. A sacrifice that is less understood or culturally supported or acknowledged. It is important that we acknowledge those sacrifices and the gravity of them. For instance, with January 6th, if we don't acknowledge the depth of conviction that folks had, how can we understand? How can we help? How can we move forward as a people, as a country? Public sentiment was against the Kent State protesters at that time, though not permanently, as that sacrifice depicted in that photo began to reverberate across the country. Sacrifice matters. And I don't mean that in the Christian, this is my cross to bear kind of way, as I think that theological fetishization of sacrifice is inherently problematic and can lead folks to self-justify incredibly harmful situations. Now here we come to Memorial Day. A day that is about sacrifice. A sacrifice that enabled the sacrifices we saw in those photos. A day about memorializing those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Or is it perhaps about barbecues? But also joy is important in memory work. Perhaps the phrase that service members died protecting our country doesn't make perfect sense to you in this moment, or even in recent memory. However, service members are at least asked to sacrifice by us, by our country. And many service members have ended up in that position of sacrifice due to moral conviction, or oftentimes economic need, or another need to escape their former situation, poverty. We prioritize and elevate a certain type of sacrifice to memorialize a combat death. What sacrifices are disenfranchised here? What about the 62 Marines who died in aircraft crashes of V-22 Ospreys, which have consistently experienced mechanical issues that the government and defense contractors have been far too slow in addressing? Those were generally on training missions, not combat. What about non-combat veterans? What about short career veterans? What about veterans who were perhaps short career veterans who experienced MST, military sexual trauma, and had to leave or were forced out by their commanding officers after reporting? What about Vietnam veterans? What about homeless veterans? And especially, what about veterans who died by suicide? Who perhaps kept a firearm with them at all times in case they needed a weapon. And they misunderstood where the enemy was. Unfortunately, I have worked with people who fall into many of these categories. The battlefield, or the rigorous world-shifting culture shock of training and military bases, is still alive in the streets. The bases and the battlefield is still alive in the streets. Veteran homelessness is a massive war injury. While any homelessness is a tragedy and the result of bad public policy, veteran homelessness is a particular stain on our collective identity, soul, and moral landscape. I think the most significant change in the American mental health landscape in the past decade or 2 decades perhaps happened in the days following the January 6th riots. It was in fact something that shocked me. Mainstream media and public sentiment counted the officers who died by suicide after that day as casualties in that day, in that conflict. What a recognition. Can we do that too for our homeless veterans? For our veterans who died by suicide? A mark of trauma is not that trauma happened in the past, but that the trauma is actively happening now, impacting how you respond to things in your daily life, witnessing an enemy that is not present, and even distorting time. Sometimes it can be hard to ask. No, it can be deadly to ask. Service members to stand down after all that sacrifice. How do we truly memorialize these sacrifices? And under what conditions do we memorialize these sacrifices? Can we feel these sacrifices in our moral being? Perhaps our sentiments on student protests, on war, on healthcare access, etc., have room to grow or even develop into action. What sacrifice do you disenfranchise? Do you understand, support, or acknowledge less? We all disenfranchise and celebrate certain types of sacrifice. Are you prioritizing and elevating a certain type of sacrifice? What does Memorial Day mean to you, and who is it for? I will close by continuing the excerpt from Willie James Jennings' War Bodies. He continues, "Therapeutic intervention should have clear sight of our troubled historical consciousness. Pastoral intervention that intends to address moral injury needs a theological vision that draws veterans into God's own memory work." He continues, "My point is the need for a vision of moral injury that is intensely communal and requires a response that turns church into a verb, where women and men and non-binary folks join the burden of veterans as their own burden and carries the weight of memory altogether. It is precisely this sense of a body shared that must lead the way in any pastoral intervention that seeks to help women and men who have experienced too much on fields of battle and must now battle alone in the fields of memory." Amen. Please join me in singing hymn 287, Faith of the Larger Liberty, in your gray hymnals, and please stand as you are willing and able.
Faith of the larger liberty, source of all the life, expanding law of the church that is to be, oh bondage notwithstanding. Faith of the free, by whom we live, by all who givest and shall give, our loyalty commanding. Heroes of faith in every age, foreseeing, self-denying, wrought an increasing heritage, monarch and divine. Faith of the free in the
I want to thank, on behalf of the congregation, Claire Galkowski for the lovely flowers in memory of her long-gone dad, Joe Robinson, who always lit up the barbecue pit this weekend. I want to remind you that immediately after the service, we have a social hour in the parish hall, through that door and to the right. Otherwise, I did not prepare our list of announcements. We have many things going on, our small group ministries, writing groups, support groups, book clubs meet at their usual time. So if you promise to look at the website, we can get to coffee a bit sooner. We always extinguish our chalice with the words of Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We can recite these together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May we remember with our veterans, young, old, combat, non-combat, the homeless, the housed. May we recognize their sacrifices for freedom and the sacrifices that they have enabled. We are surrounded by courage and conviction. Dear God, may we move through this world, turning church into a verb, and join the burdens of veterans and protesters, creating a radical community where we contribute to God's own memory of our complex communities. Amen.